Wow, the world is looking.
We are here. We are here. Blessed by nature. The land that once emerged to biodiversity. Uniting humanity. Where scientific minds have fed from for centuries. Here, we watch, listen, and learn. To adapt and share. To understand the true nature of respect. The same nature that thrives as the world prepares for the new normal. This is our natural normal. We are here. Ever since we changed the world, we are prepared, and we will be here to change yours. Panama.
Good morning and good afternoon from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Panama. Welcome to this conference, Panama Evolution and Opportunities. Today we have the opportunity to have a conversation with three Panamanian experts from different areas, from the art, the academic area, and the architect. In occasion of the commemoration of the 170 years of the anniversary of the Republic of Panama and 180 years of the independence from Panama, the Spain. First, we will introduce the first expert, the first speaker, Rebecca Somosa. Ms. Somosa is an architect, and she served as executive director of the Historic District Office in Panama City in 2014, and then she was executive director of the Liberty and Human Rights Museum in Panama in 2017. Now she is member the ICOMOS, the International Council of Museums and Sites in Panama, and also the International Commission as advisor for the UNESCO World Heritage Center. Please, welcome to Ms. Somosa.
Good morning. Thank you and welcome for being here. Today we're going to speak about how the Panama City's historic district has changed, how has it evolved since during the Republican era. Thank you, and you are more than welcome. And let's start with the presentation. I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for this invitation, and also the Ministry of Culture, the Authority of Tourism, that updated that data for this conference. I reviewed some documents, the book La Ciudad Imaginada, The Mayan City by Dr. Castillero Calvo, and the article El Casco Antiguo de la Ciudad de Panamá, Panama City's Historic District by Dr. Eduardo Tejera Davis. The State of Conservation Country Report for the World Heritage Center, UNESCO, by January 2017. And I got some beautiful photographs from previous and internet sources, the National Library, and also from the Panama Old School blog. I prepared an itinerary for all of you with 5 stops at Casco Antiguo. The first, let's talk about history, then urbanism, afterwards society, architecture, and economy. We will be covering a timeline for the contemporary era. I would like to share with you some world milestones that you already know. The 2 world wars, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Act, and also the fall of the Berlin Wall, where the third globalization started. We can move to the next slide, please. The previous one, please. Thank you. We will be covering some Panama's milestones, starting in the earliest years of the 20th century with the separation of Panama from Colombia. And there are several milestones like the Haibunu-Varela Treaty that allowed the United States to build the Panama Canal, the inauguration of the Panama Canal by 1914, the rupture of diplomatic relations with USA in the 64, We entered a military dictatorship period, starting with the coup d'etat by General Omar Torrijos in '68. And during this time, also we had the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, which is very important for us because it was the start for the return of all Panamanian territory and the military bases territories and all the infrastructure of the Panama Canal. The last period until to these days is the democratic period. It started with the invasion of Panama by USA, the surrender of General Manuel Antonio Noriega, and by 1999, we got the reversion of all the Panama Canal zone and all the infrastructure. Next, please. So let's start with history from department to nation. Next, please. We started as a department that is a kind of province. When we separated from independent from Spain by 1821, we united to the great and ambitious project of a Confederation of Nations that was portrayed by Simón Bolívar. And afterwards, when the Gran Colombia dissolved, we remain as an associated state to Colombia. And in the last days of the earliest days of the 20th century, we were a department, which is a kind of province. And one of our greater thinkers and politicians, Dr. Justo Rosemena, defended the thesis and the aim of the Panamanians to be independent and have their sovereignty. You can see here the Plaza de Chiriquí Barracks. It was a prison. Please, next slide. And in this prison, unfortunately, it was the execution of General Victoriano Lorenzo. Victoriano Lorenzo was the general of the poor. He defended for the people to have land and have food. And he got in the middle of the war, or La Guerra de los Mil Días, the 1,000 Days War, that was between the two dominant parties in Colombia, the liberals and the conservatives. And he joined the liberal party, the liberal efforts, and well, unfortunately, he got this execution. Very unfair. Oh, well, by that time, we had also the Compagnie Universelle du Canal Interoceanique, that was the company led by Count Ferdinand de Lesseps, and that was in charge of the construction of the Panama Canal during the French administration. Next, please. And then becoming a nation, we started a very important program after the separation of Panama from Colombia of construction of institutional buildings. Here is one of them, the City Hall. It originally was in the colonial time, this had the same function. And now is this beautiful building with some elements of the Neo-Renaissance. And Dr. Belisario Porras, portrayed here, was president twice, and he developed a big program of construction from the government, the Panamanian government. Here you can see him also at the opening, at the inauguration of the Plaza de Francias square. This is a commemorative square for the efforts to build the Panama Canal. Next, please. Here is Dr. Ricardo J. Alfaro. He was a humanist, a lawyer, and he was a great contributor of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. He was president, and you can see here also the beautiful building, the Presidential Palace. It was also a colonial structure, and it was the treasury, and now has been a witness of many important events of Panamanian Republican history. Palacio Bolívar in the lower left side is the actual Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Next, please. Regarding urbanism, this is our second stop, from small city to World Heritage. Next, please. In this map of the city, you can see that our historic district is a peninsula, and it was surrounded by a wall from colonial times. There was a part of this colonial wall that was in the land side, and it was demolished by the last third of the 19th century to expand the city to the other neighborhoods of Santa Ana and Chorrillo, beyond San Felipe, which was the original walled area. Here you can see also above the railroad, and here is a picture also of the tramway that worked until the 40s. Next, please. A picture of President Theodore Roosevelt. He made his first visit outside the U.S. To Panama to visit the works of the Panama Canal. He was received by our first president, Manuel Amador Guerrero. Here they are right in front of the cathedral. And Dr. William Gorgas was a key person of the Panama Canal construction, because he handled to avoid and prevent all the contagious diseases spread from the mosquitoes, like yellow fever and malaria. Next, please. And becoming a World Heritage, we have been issuing several laws of protection for the historic district. The first one was issued in 1976 that protected the yellow area that you see in the right map. Then in 1997, we protected the pink area that belongs to part of the Santa Ana and El Chorrillo neighborhoods. And that same year, our historic district was included in the list of World Heritage. And the last protection area is in the seaside. You can see the yellow dotted line that is surrounding the historic district, and it was that protection came by 2014. And there is a beautiful aerial view of the San Felipe neighborhood, which is the walled area. Next, please. We are also sending, we have also sent to UNESCO a larger serial property nomination that will cover Casco Antiguo, the old Panama City site, the Pacific, the Atlantic, also the Fort San Lorenzo, Portobello, which are already World Heritage too, and to add the Royal Road, the Camino Real, and Las Cruces Trail, which were important connections and the antecessors of the Panama Canal too. Next, please. Third stop, society, from provincial to cosmopolitan. Next, please. We started, by that time, we had a population that was composed by indigenous Africans, African descendants, European descendants, and also the population that migrate for the construction of the railroad and the Panama Canal that came from China, from other European countries, and from the Caribbean too. So we were like a melting pot of people from all over the world. And nevertheless, we had still these traditions from the Hispanic colonial times, like the bullfighting in the Plaza Santa Ana. You can see that scene, and you can see on the right, on the left, this scene of a market at open air where there are some women selling fruits, vegetables, and also pottery. Next, please. We have also this traditional dancing and music, the carnival parade. Next, please. To become even more open society with public events like this one in Plaza Mayor, a cultural festival at night, showing contemporary art in Las Bóvedas, which was the prison I mentioned before. Next, please. A fashion catwalk, the International Film Festival at Teatro Nacional. Next, please. And also, unfortunately, we are suffering as most historic districts that are becoming restored and changing their their dynamics, we are also suffering from this gentrification that expels many important parts of our living history and living patrimony, like the old neighbors that have been living there for years, for decades. Here you can see a protest of local inhabitants regarding more social housing solutions. So this is a very important subject to address by our government. Next, please. Fourth stop, architecture, from colonial to eclectic. Next, please. The better examples of our colonial architecture that many of them stays up to these days are the churches. Here you can see the cathedral, which is one of the largest of Central America. And at your right, you can see the Casa Góngora, which is a colonial domestic example of the type of construction with long corridors, long balconies, and the arches are semicircular. Next, please. Next, please. Yes, this one. You can see also the convent of Santo Domingo and the chapel, the white chapel that right now is a museum, and the beautiful golden altar, which is in the San Jose Church. Next, please. Then from colonial, we evolved to this eclectic architecture. We were receiving materials, technologies from all over the world, and also styles. So you can see this beautiful house, the Casa Art Deco, the Art Deco house. We have also examples from and in the left side, there is a San Francisco church with some neo-Renaissance details, and this beautiful bell tower, which was newly built on top of the colonial one. And this gorgeous interior is the National Theater. It was designed by Italian architect Gennaro Ruggieri. It has beautiful paintings from our master, Roberto Lewis. Next, please. Here, Hotel Colombia. This hotel has some Moorish detailing, as you can see, and the colors reminds of the Andalusian architecture. And below is the Museum of the Canal Interoceanic, and this museum, it was the old Compagnie Universelle du Canal Interoceanique, and has this French mansard inspired on top of it, among other important details of that kind of architecture. And on the right, on the left, you can see the two beautiful houses that unfortunately we lost in a fire in 2017. These houses had this style, this Caribbean style. They were made of wood. They're very open. This work of lattice, and those houses were Casa Francia and Casa Boyacá that unfortunately we lost. And not only is an architectural loss, because it is greatly loss for the community, because both of them were social houses. Next, please. And then our last stop, economy, from trade to cultural tourism. Next, please. By that time, the early days of the last days of the 19th century and the earliest of the 20th century, we had several retails and shops that sell and bring imports from China, USA, France. Here you can see the Central Hotel on the left, the Grand Central Hotel, and also below is a drugstore and some retailing. At the right, you can see the boats that were anchored in the Panama bays, and these boats were coming back and forth to the countryside, bringing all kind of fruits, vegetables, and also giving other goods that were imported to the countryside too. Next, please. The Café Coca-Cola is a very important cafe that is still open, and it was visited by presidents, by movie stars, by famous writers. Below there is a Chinese import shop, and on your right you can see a beautiful house that belonged to Carlos Endara, the first photographer that we had, one of the first that we had here. He was from Ecuador, and this beautiful house today is a museum. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yes, there. Thank you. And well, we are now trying to position our historic district as a cultural tourism destination within the city, within Panama. And here you can see the gorgeous National Theater again with a rehearsal of the Panama Jazz Festival, which is an international festival. And on the left, you can see the Museum of Religious Art, the chapel, the white chapel that we saw before. And below, even a paddle contest at Santo Domingo Beach. Next, please. Next, please. At your left, you can see Casa Calvo, a beautiful Belle Epoque inspired kind of architecture. This house at the street level has a Guayabera boutique. This Guayabera is a very typical shirt for the tropics, made on cotton and linen. So it's a great gift to have from Panama. And you can see also some outdoor dining in Plaza Bolivar and handcrafts restaurants and cafes in one of our Casco Antiguo streets. Next, please. I would like you to have these takeaways as souvenirs from Casco Antiguo regarding history, our struggle for sovereignty, urbanism, the exceptional kind of architecture, the urban layout that we have that allowed us to get this distinction as World Heritage. Our society, multicultural, diverse, our architecture, a mixture of styles, materials, techniques, technologies. And regarding economy, we are a globalized economy. Our economy is based in the US dollar. And we are an important logistical center with several services around the Panama Canal and also a banking center. And now we are really liking to share with the world, with the visitors, the wonders of our country from nature and from our culture. Next, please. Thank you all for your attention, and I will be glad to take some questions at the end of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Somosa, for this introduction to our story. Panama has a long story from the pre-Columbian and then in the colonial time, and obviously the origin of the Republic of Panama began in this city, in the Casco or the old historic district of Panama City. Now we have other perception about the story in Panama, but in this case from the art. For this case, we have the participation of Humberto Vélez, who is an artist and academic. Also, he is a lawyer, and he had solo performance shows at the Tate Modern, the center funded as the Art Gallery of Ontario, and participate in the Venice, Havana, and Shanghai Biennales. Now, Humberto Vélez is an artist, curator, art professor, and independent filmmaker. Welcome, Mr. Vélez.
Good afternoon. Thanks a lot, and good afternoon. I'm going to talk about the art in Panama in 2020. For this, I think it's important to comment about the former artists and the situation of the arts in Panama, the contemporary arts in Panama in the late 20th century. The thing of this conversation, of this talk, is art in Panama from the year 2000 to 2020, 20 years of contemporary art in Panama. I have been developing this conversation, this talk, with Adrián Samos, curator, leading curator and art critic of Panama. So we have been developing some ideas for you related to this subject. I need to say a few words about it just before starting to talk and show you some images with the support of Francisco Marquez, that is going to be helping me with the images. Some ideas before about what happened in Panama in the late 20th century. Let's start. At the beginning of the last decade of the 20th century, Panama was framed by two important events. The decade opened with the United States invasion on December the 20th, 1989, and finished with the official handover of the canal to Panama on the last day of December 1999. The traumas caused by the invasion, the fall of the long dictatorship, and the gradual dissolution of the colonial enclave have increased our whole obsession in defining what may constitute a Panamanian identity. But in this case, but without nationalist claims to homogeneity, that in the past has restrained a thriving critical debate of the subject. In this case, and that point, as never before, artists are taking on a leading role in this very complex question of our identity. The image that you see at the moment is from Julio Sacristan. I'm going to talk a little bit before explaining more about the 21st century, about three leading artists of the late 20th century. Julio Sacristan is one of them. Julio Sacristan at the moment is in his 90s. He has been fantastically prolific, and he lives in Madrid. The work of Julio Sacristan point to the main thematic and formal trends of young artists today. That is how important is his influence. It's about urban reality. His work relates to the ubiquitous tropical environment, the recording of traditional or aboriginal techniques, an open sensuality, a mischievous sense of humor, social commentary with ironic flair, and the body as a metaphor. Although Julio Sacristan had lived in Madrid since the 1960s, his art still conveys the spirit of the popular and the urban neighborhood of Panama. We can see now one of his engraved. He has been awarded many times locally in Panama and internationally for his engraves that touch not only about the popular, but as well has a very strong message about national and anti-imperialistic subjects. And the next artist is Brooke Alfaro. Brooke Alfaro. Brooke Alfaro talk about the life of the marginalized urban inhabitants of Panama City, especially the residents of San Felipe or the Old Town. The image is the area that you have seen recently by my colleague. The San Felipe or the Old Town is the historic district where he lived for many years and where he returns every day to work. He presents a caustic sense of humor and tricks to subvert the possible interpretation of his art. He started with portraits in his career and took into installation art, video art, and now landscape, mural, and sculptures. You can see a little bit of his work, the idea of landscape and people, and very difficult at this moment to see the image, but there's an element of community and involvement, especially this day. He's a environment. He's very concerned about environment, and he's an activist about preserving our environment in Panama. The next artist is Sandra Eleta. These three artists, Brooke Alfaro, Julio Sacrison, and Sandra Eleta, have been very important in defining the arts in the late 20th century in Panama. Sandra Eleta, the powers of the images of Sandra Eleta, the most international photographer of Panama, lies in her intimate gaze, and that's it, in the way the body and face reveals some truth about the protagonist and her environment. Her most compelling and comprehensive testimony of her body of work is the one devoted to the humble fishing village of Portobello in the Caribbean, where she has lived for 5 decades. And now let's move into the 20th century, after mentioning these fantastic three artists from Panama from the second half of the 20th century. And I want to start in the 21st century with one exceptional event in Panama that it was called, and it's called Ciudad Multiple City. This 1 month international event that it happened in 2003 commemorates the centenary of the separation of Panama from Colombia. It was curated by Cuban curator Gerardo Mosquera and Adrián Samos, our critic, curator, and writer. 12 artists were invited to participate. Between them, Francis Alice, the Belgian-Mexican artist, and we can see now one of his pieces that it was called A Minute of Silence. He and a group of friends traveled across the city and invited the population to have a one moment of quietness, that it was reproduced in silence, in blocks, in houses, in streets. We can move into the next image, please, Francisco. Thank you. That's another example. We can see curator Adrián Samos just trying to convey these atmospheres in a popular street of San Felipe or El Chorrillo, one of the two most important popular neighborhoods of the old town, of the old areas of Panama. Another important artist, let's move to the next image, please. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Francisco. That dramatic image is from Mexican artist Gustavo Artigas, who now lives in Toronto. What is it? It's the burning of the town hall in the old town. He created a fake burning of the town by the surprise of many people in the area. He wanted to bring attention not only to the old monuments, but what we're doing with us, with our identity, with our heritage. And I have to say, it was one of the most intense and possibly confusing, but marvelously significant performances of Multiple City in 2003. Let's move to let's carry on. Thank you, Francisco. Now we can see that's the cathedral in the far left. That's the Plaza de la Independencia, the Independence Square. And there was actually a fake firefighters car just helping to develop the whole drama about the burning of the old town hall. And let's see the next image. Let's see what we have from this. And there's another position, exactly, this work of Gustavo Artigas from Mexico. And we carry on then with another image from Multiple City, 2003. That was from the fantastic artist Gada Amer from Egypt. What Ada Amer was trying to do was to present some proverbs from the Arab world into a Panamanian kind of language. She worked with local popular painters that decorate buses in Panama. We're going to see an image quite soon of what they do. And she put these new signs, artworks all around, just presenting ideas and commenting, being critical about what was happening in our society. And this one, for example, is saying, what you see is truth. What you maybe are listening is not. Both for, and let's move into the next wonderful sign of Gada Amer from Egypt. Let's see what she says in the next one. Francisco, if you help me to carry on exactly. This is talking about poverty in this, well, very, we see the contrast between the skyscrapers and a kind of poor area of Panama City. And there's another one. Let's carry on, please. Thank you very much, Francisco, with the next image. Okay, take the hill for controlling. These were the headquarters of the former governor of the Panama Canal Zone. So it's a very symbolic, historic place for us, and that she was just putting some ideas, some comments about it. Let's carry on with the next, please. Thank you very much, Francisco. Gada Amer, and this is very funny, actually, next to a McDonald's, she said, if you eat less, you taste more. And there's another works from there were another works as well from, let's move a little bit, please. Thank you, Francisco. For Ciudad Múltiple as well invited Ku Xiong from China. He now lives in Canada. Joan Capote, Juan Andrés Milanés from Cuba. Jesus Palomino from Spain. Our Way of Thinking from Venezia. Gustavo Araujo, Brooke Alfaro, and me, we were invited from Panama. And we created all this work trying to create a direct impact of the people of the street through photography, installation, performance art, and video installation. I want to talk a little bit now about some artists that created very important work in the beginning of the 21st century in Panama. And the next is from Gustavo Araujo. Let's see the next image, please, Francisco. Carry on. That's the cover of the book, Multiple Cities, Ciudad Múltiple. Multiple City. That is a fantastic piece of Gustavo Araujo. Gustavo Araujo, that he was an artist of my generation, he died about 10 years ago. And his work goes beyond the traditional boundaries of photography. His images are often contained in billboards, industrial-like boxes, and become pieces that redefine the surrounding space. We can see now one of his most important pieces that is contained in an industrial-like boxes, and it's one of those bags that we use for measuring the wind, the breeze, and how it flows in different ways. It's a very beautiful composition that it is illuminated because it's an industrial light box. We can see now, please, we would like to see another work of Gustavo Araujo. That's a billboard, and this one is brilliant. It's called Exit. It's a small industrial light boxes. It's with a beach with idea of escapism, maybe an idea of a landscape contained in a small box. Beautiful, small, delicate. And we're going to carry on with the next image, please. And yes, please, carry on, please. Thank you very much, Francisco. Okay, this is a performance called The Fight. This is a performance I created in the year 2007 for the Tate Model, and it's a collaborative participatory performance that I create in collaboration with amateur boxing clubs from South London. The idea was to create an international performance working with the local people. At the moment, the Tate wanted to include people from the area where it recently moved. And this piece took over with these boxers, the whole Turban Hall, and as well, we came from different places, including the Thames and the Millennium Bridge. We changed together with the help of musicians and dancers, working together with all these boxers, male and female, all in John, to create a new choreographed piece of boxing and music that took about 4 hours. And eventually brought into the Tate the communities, the neighbor communities from South London. And we're moving into the next image, please. This is a cabaret aquatic. It was a performance that I created, and it was commissioned by the Centre Pompidou à la Piscine Josephine Baker. I work in this case in collaboration with swimming clubs from all around Paris and young artists and spoken word artists from Paris to create this kind of celebration of the idea of combining arts, swimming, dance, spoken word, young people at the floating piscine Josephine Baker that is just next to the Bibliothèque François Mitterrand in Paris, in the South Bank. And we're moving into the next image, please. This is a performance for the Havana Biennial in collaboration with this female band, all-female band called Cristal. It was created in the year 2004, and we created together a series of songs and concerts, including one for the opening of the biennial, talking about the condition of women, of the female artists, specifically in Cuba at the time, at the beginning of the 20th century. And finally, from these collaborative performances projects, this is called The Most Beautiful, La Más Bella. It was created for the Cuenca Biennial in the Andes in Ecuador, and it was a llamas and alpacas parade and beauty contest. It was a commentary about inclusion and about contemporary art, and it got the participation of First Nation people from around the Cuenca region and local people from Cuenca. We can see now the llamas and alpacas and the First Nation people just coming out from the performance at the Museo Municipal de Arte Moderno. We're moving now to two wonderful artists from who have been living in Panama for many years, Donna and Jonathan Hanke. Talking about Jonathan Hanke, that he's been working closely with Donna Connell. Jonathan Hanke shows a sardonic view of the tricks of capitalism and Panamanian conservative society. Between his films and video installation, he also has created a wonderful series of postcards commenting ironically about the seriousness of the devotion of Panamanians to folky events and issues. And now we're going to present one picture of one of the work of Donna Condon. Okay, I think that we missed the Donna Condon image, but I want to anyway talk about Donna Condon briefly. She's an American biologist, turned artist who decided to make home in Panama decades ago. Colon highlights the shifting character of beauty and coexistence by working at the threshold where nature and human relate in her videos, photograph, and three-dimension projects. And now the images that you're going to see are part of the wonderful collective of photographers called Los del Patíbulo. Los del Patíbulo are a new group of artists that is, there's a thriving community of photographers in Panama and filmmakers, I have to say as well. And these are some of the images. These images is from a performance, and it was taken by Fernando Bocanegra. Let's move to the next one, please. This one is from Alegre Saporta. That it pictures some of the people from the police, and well, they have a the national police. They're known as well for his talent in music. Next picture, please. More of this photography of contemporary photography of Panama. This is another picture of Bocanegra. This is a cemetery of buses. There was a decommission of buses with the modernization a few years ago of the public transport, and all these wonderful, amazing buses that you can see that Gadamer got the inspiration for her signs across the city in Panama, a multiple city project in 2003. They were decommissioned and they were put in this cemetery of buses. Let's see into the next one. That was a picture of Fernando Bocanegra. This picture is from Alfredo Martís, an architect and a wonderful photographer who has been traveling and living in Japan some years ago. And well, this is about our fascination with music and how we take music everywhere in a great scale. Next, move into the next wonderful photograph of this collective. This is a fascinating moment of traditional image, and these are Diablos Espejos de Portobelo. These are devils that they decorate their body with costumes full of mirrors, and that is in Portobelo. So this is a special moment. Of course, it got Ancestry influence, but this is one of the most interesting moments in the Portobelo's festivities. And let's carry on, because we got more about our traditions, contemporary and old traditions. Let's move into the next, please, Francisco. More of the cemetery. Let's carry on. There were many decommissions. This is a mixture of the local innables and some. There was taken about a few years ago demonstrations and political upheaval that happened some years ago in Panama. No, between one and another. Let's carry on into these wonderful images. It's a lovely conversation between neighbors. That's from Carlos Mora in a popular area of Panama. Let's see another picture of the collective Los del Patíbulo. There's a series of, we like to decorate our bicycles, of course, and we got different pictures. This is one. Let's see the next one, please, Francisco. Okay, this is another fantastic tradition. It's a very unusual, maybe for Panama, but yes, this is the celebration of the Toro Guapo, the beautiful bullfighter in La Chorrera, that is a community next to Panama City, in which men dress up with the pollera, the traditional Panamanian female dressed. And yes, it's a kind of cross-dressing performance that became traditional event, and that is in very popular, very popular at the moment. Let's carry on with the next image. This is from Tito Herrera. This is part of one of the Cristo de Portobelo, that is in Portobelo City in the Caribbean. We mentioned before that. And one of the pennant that travel from different places of the country get to Portobello and devote all this suffering to the Cristo de Portobello. And you can see how painful this image it is happen every year in Portobello. And we can see one of those moments related to these Via Crucis that we find in the Portobello in the Caribbean side. Let's carry on with these wonderful images of Miss Panama. Miss Panama is a very important culture in the Panama calendar, with all the goods and bads and terrible situations that we can think that come from it. Also, is a way for many females to who want to create controversy related to social issues to participate. For instance, I remember this is a picture of Fernando Bocanegra, this Chinese Panamanian in the contest. It was about 6-7 years ago. She said that she was there mainly because she wanted to say to the Panamanian people that being Chinese and Panamanian, it was beautiful. So it was a very political, ethnic, and cultural statement that we have to take that and not with the example that how we can see beauty contests necessarily, for instance, in Europe. So she was there for a political, at least in her idea, with a political achievement. Beauty is not only the idea of, and we're talking about the idea of the Panamanian main culture, think about what's supposed to be beautiful. There we have many beauties in Panama, many kind of beauties. And I still starting from the beginning of our talk, we're talking about our identity. That is a main cause of discussion in our country. And she just received the news that she wasn't in the final three. So wonderful, she's imposed, she's composed, she's just dropping one little drop, one tear, but she's proud. And next image, please. And I want to show you what is happening now at the moment in Panama. We are developing, in collaboration, some colleagues, artists, curators, and me, the first Panamanian performance festival that is linked to a Latin American performance festival. And specifically what you see now is the performance of La Banda del Hogar. That is a brass band, one is the most popular band of Panama. They come out, they present their work in every November during the traditional independence and separation of Colombia festivities. And they have been traveling to New York and many other places in Latin America. Anyway, they have created this Sinfonía Popular for starting the bicentenary of our independence of Spain. Mainly what they're saying is we have an idea of who we are, of our identity, our popular identities in the 21st century. And they express it in the National Theater. They took the National Theater, that it was somehow, it always has been a bastion of the middle and upper classes, and changed the tone through their music. Let's put the first clip of it, please, of Sinfonía Popular for the 200 years, the homage of the 200 years of the independence of Panama, of Spain, identity and 2020. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Think that we got some troubles with the music. Can we see Francisco? If we can't, yeah. Can you Melba, Rebecca, do you hear? No?
No.
Francisco, can you try it again, please? Thank you, Francisco. Thank you. Yeah, because it will be a shame that we will be able to listen to this wonderful band. Okay, I think that we try. And yes, this is a video performance that is going to be launched 28th of November. Yes, this video performance is going to be launched on the 28th anniversary of our independence from Spain. Is a significant date for us, and it's about identity, about who we are, and that's what we're doing. The first Panama Performance Festival, and hopefully you will be able to see it. We are doing it partially with the support of the ministry, of the new ministry, and now we have as well the support, the help of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the cultural side. Thank you very much, and hopefully that will be helpful to talk about the richness and the excitement that what we're doing with the cultural side and the art in Panama.
Thank you so much, Mr. Velez, for this presentation, because the artists are very important part of our society. You express from other side, from the other view, how we understand our society. So now we have the opportunity to, with Miss Law, Melba Law. She is a retired professor in English, who started her career in the University of Zambia, and then she was part of the English department in the University of Panama, our first university. Now, she's part of the commission for the Bienal of our independence from Spain, and she's president of the Society of Friends of the Afro-Caribbean Museum of Panama. Now she will talk about a people of African ancestry in Panama, 1501 to 2012. Welcome.
Thank you, Francisco. Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for this invitation to participate and to share some of my experiences as Francisco says, I'm a retired university professor of English. And once I retired from teaching, I became involved in setting up the West Indian or Afro-Caribbean Museum of Panama. That was a very important project for me because at the time I was perturbed that those of us of African ancestry in Panama were not visible. We were not visible in the historical documents. We're not visible in publications. We're not visible in many of the signs that were around the city. I remember I studied in the United States during the 1960s, and as many of you may remember, that was a period of intense revolution, so to speak, demand for the civil rights of the Black population of that country. And I observed what was happening, and at every point I compared it to what I grew up with in the Republic of Panama. And I said, you know, we also need to have a revolution in the Republic of Panama to gain better recognition of the role that people of African descent played in contributing to the development of our country. So once I returned to Panama during the 1970s, and this is after living in the United States for about 5 years, living in Africa for about 2 years, I came back with that desire to participate or to do something to have our people, those of us who claim African ancestry, and there are many of us, become more visible, become more noteworthy for the contributions we made to the development of this country. And so as soon as I got settled, it was about the time that there was a conference that was taking place at the University of Panama. And somehow coincidentally, many voices from the African descended communities participated in that conference and expressed the fact that, you know, in Panama, there is no recognition for the contributions of people of African ancestry. The organizer of that conference at the time, Reina Torres de Arauz, was one of the most outstanding persons in our cultural history. And she was in the process of setting up museums throughout the Republic of Panama. And listening to many expressions of discontent of the Black community, then said, well, okay, let us preserve the area of the Caledonia of Panama, that a church, which was a church built by the men who came to build the Panama Canal from Barbados. During that time, the immigrants from the Afro-Caribbean islands, Barbados especially, there were about 40,000 coming from Barbados, and there were about 20 other thousand coming in from from other places in Panama. And so we therefore, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, there were these many, there were so many people of African descent who have helped to build the infrastructure of Panama, and that we're just going to begin to agitate for greater recognition. So we got the museum built, and it has been functioning for about 40 years now. But as a result of my participation in the workings of the museum, I've also taken an interest in other aspects of the arrival to the Black population here in Panama. And many of the visitors to the museum would express the assertion that the Black population came to Panama for the building of the Panama Railroad in 1850 and in the building of the canal from the 1880. And both international and national visitors had this impression of the building of Panama. And I said, no. I said, in the 16th century, we had enslaved Africans who were brought to the isthmus. And for 3 centuries, the slave trade played out in this isthmus of Panama, and that history is not being told. Now, it's not my particular specialty, that aspect of Panamanian history, but about 10 years ago, I just made the decision to start doing more in research in that area. And in the year 2012, I published the book Afrodescendientes en el Istmo de Panamá. Francisco, I don't know if you have an image of that book. And then 2 years later, in 2014, I published the English version of that book, the English translation, which is People of African Ancestry in Panama. Francisco, do you have an image of the books? Anyway, we'll continue. So I'm going to be just sharing with you some of the highlights of the history of people of African descent in the Republic of Panama. As I said, the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, with the slave trade, which was the biggest economic activity in the world, it played out in the Isthmus of Panama. There were ferias de Portobello on the Atlantic coast, where enslaved Africans were sold or distributed to other parts of the Americas. And there were many enslaved Africans that rebelled. There were rebellions taking place all through. Many escaped, and it was ingenious to find how they were able to get rid of some of the shackles, that the iron chains on their feet or among their other parts of their bodies, to escape and form their maroon communities, which still exist on the Atlantic coast of our country. So there is that story that is still not being taught in our schools. so that our students, many of whom, you know, Panama for a great, okay, there are the books I mentioned, People of African Ancestry in Panama, 1501 to 2012, and then there is the Spanish version. There is still that that history that's not being taught, and there is still an aura of invisibility of that population. There is the author George Reed Andrews, who said in one of the charts of this book, who studied the bicentenary, the revolutions for independence that were taking place through Latin America. And he states in a chart that he puts, he said in 1800, the population of Panama was about 66% of people of African descent. And that percentage is still quite high, even though there have been systematic efforts to reduce the identification of people of African ancestry. We were relegated to the lowest socioeconomic conditions, and many people were taught not to identify with their Afro-descendant roots. There has been the trend to say marry white, or there is a trend that they call the mestizaje or the blanqueamiento, where Black people have been encouraged to marry people that will change the appearance of their race. And so there has been that tendency to be ashamed of the appearance, or the phenotypical appearance of an African person, and also they were taught both from the Catholic Church and the schools that the people who were the descendants of the enslaved were all Spanish, and by saying that they were Spanish, it means that they were not African. The African component of our society has yet to be recognized. When I went to the United States, as I said, I studied there in the 60s. And whenever I said I was from Panama, I would get all these quizzical glances, and my classmates would say to me, "Oh, but I didn't know there were people of African descent in Panama." And I said, "Yes, there is quite a large percentage of people of African descent. Or in Panama, we're the ones who did the hard work of helping to develop the lands and the resources of this country." There are numerous activities, commercial activities that we were utilized in, and we therefore have a very important role in this in this nation. With the founding of the West Indian Museum of Panama, or the Afro-Caribbean Museum of Panama, our organization has been SAMAP, which is Sociedad de Amigos del Museo Afro-Antiano de Panama, the Society of Friends of the Afro-Caribbean Museum of Panama. We have been able to get it out into the consciousness of the people, the importance of recognizing our African heritage, and of recognizing not only those who came for the building of the railroad, but those who were here, who were brought as enslaved Africans to these shores, who were used to develop the many agricultural farms that we developed, who were used in the transporting goods and transporting wealth from one part of from the Atlantic to the Pacific and from the Pacific to the Atlantic. We don't have a monument as such to any person of African descent. And this is why our organization, SAMAP, was founded, because we could not afford to have our museum closed because of lack of government support. It is a governmental institution, but we have been supporting it over the past 40 years to make sure that the doors are kept open, because this is the one place where people feel they can come to find out more about the people of African descent in Panama. We therefore are very proud of the many contributions our people have made, not only in building, not only in transportation, but in the arts, in music, as lawyers. We had a mulatto president, the third president of Panama, Carlos Mendoza, was of African ancestry. And with the conspiration with the US involvement, he was not able to complete the term to which he was entitled to finish. And in order not to create instability in the country, he decided not to continue to fight. So there is that tendency to many people, once that generation no longer reflect the features of Africans, then they would not identify with the African heritage. So our role, and I think my role in the Bicentenary Committee, is to give a voice, an African voice, to those of us in this country who are of African descent, and to express pride in the work that the many people of African ancestry did to help to develop our country, and we continue to do. I don't have the time to get into the later waves of the work that the immigrants from the Caribbean did in constructing our railroad and our Panama Canal, but all that added to the work that those early enslaved Africans did have helped to make Panama the country of transit, so important to the world today. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Lowe, for this, for your exposition about our African roots in Panama. That is very important because we are African. This country is Africa. This country is indigenous. This country is and makes that everything. And we obviously we can see through these three expositions that Panama is a makes that everything, and that is the thing that we want to express today with our guests. We don't know if any guests have any question, but I will start the conversation with all of you about what do you think will happen the next year when Panama will celebrate the 200 years independence from Spain. What changed in our country? What do you think is Panama in the 21st century? Let's start with Ms. Somosa.
Yes, thank you, Francisco, and thank you to Humberto and to Melba for these two great conferences you just gave. And I expect to keep on pushing our boundaries, our mental and boundaries, and invest in more education to acknowledge the diversity that we have, to be more open to change, to be more tolerant. I think we still have a long way to go regarding human rights, regarding discrimination, and our nation has a history of tolerance, but unfortunately of discrimination too. So we need to do a hard work in that sense too. And I guess education is key for that. Sharing spaces like this to get to know each other best, our roots, the heritage that we share, and make this country even a better place to be.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez.
I think there are many challenges, and from the art point of view, I know that there are many artists and collective of artists who are working to present their work, to talk about the issues that are interested about. Okay, can you hear me properly? Yes. Yeah, thank you. So there are many people already organizing, and that we found this media actually not only as the media and talking about these kind of platforms or other kind of platform communication are becoming a way of expressing and creating, not only as a way of communicating things, but a real box of languages to express different things, and that give the opportunity also to people who in the past, due to the I mean, this is it. I mean, the opportunities or the differences, financial, economic, social difference that we have, that's is a very acute in our country. This medium give a little bit, let's not to be so romantic neither, the opportunity of express themselves in a different way. So we don't only have the museum, but we have these platforms up to a point express different point of view, and the possibility of young generations to reinvent the idea of who we are now. That it's completely important, is completely relevant, is what Rebecca and Melba has been saying. We are what we are, what we were in the last 20 years, and what we are now after this, not after, we are still through the pandemic, but how can we live with all these huge social and economic and ethnic differences? That's the challenge, through the arts, to communication, and hopefully we will be able as well to express it internationally, not only nationally.
Thank you. Professor Law?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think we still have a lot of work to do. As I said, we have started reversing the process where we were taught not to identify as Black people, and that process has probably been going on for the past 50 years. And so now we have to intensify that process and acknowledge our last census, as I said, or in the year 1800, our population was 66%, according to George Reed Andrews, the population of Panama. And if you measure the population during the period of the construction of the canal, when we had that massive influx of Afro-Caribbeans for the construction, that there was also a large contingent of the African presence. But the last official census that we did, it showed a percentage of 9.2% of people who identify not as Black, because then Black or Negro has acquired a very pejorative sense in this country. So we have come up with the term Afrodescendiente. And in that census, only 9.2% of the population identified as Afrodescendiente. Now, anybody who's walked around our main avenues in our big cities and even in our smaller communities will realize that that percentage is unrealistic. So there's still a lot of work to do to get our people to accept who we are. Of course, there've been a lot of Afro-mestizaje. There's been a lot of mixtures with not only the white population, but the Chinese population, and primarily the indigenous populations. And so there are lots of mixtures. And one of the historians said that he would not be surprised if he did a DNA test that showed that at least 80% of the population of Panama have some form of African roots. There was a serious DNA study that showed it that there was at least a third of the population had indigenous roots, and another third had African roots. There is that study that I talk about in my book. So we have to get the facts down and also lift the self-esteem of the population so that we can feel comfortable in our skin, feel comfortable with who we are, and continue to help to contribute, help to develop this very important nation of Panama.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your opinion, for your comments. And now, very quick, I would like to know, how do you think Panama can stretch its relation with our roots, with Africa, with Europe, and with other countries from each of a expression of your areas? Ms. Somosa?
Yes. Well, now that we are going through this social distancing, it could be challenging. But the media, the digital world help us to share and to extend those bridges to other countries, to other cultures. And I think that's exciting how this tool can help us to get more united, to get to know each other, learn about the difference and see those differences not as barriers, but to see them as really it's an enrichment of our culture, of our nature, of being human beings. You know, the differences, what we learn from each other. I think that's amazing, and it's an unexplored world in many ways. So these kind of events where we can get together, get to know different tendencies, different trends, different cultures, different gastronomy, music, art, you name it, literature. So I think this helps us expand the world, and I think the newer generations are more aware of that, of how close we are really in terms of the digital world, and how can we socially also can get to know each other, and you know get to know that we are the same, but with a world of differences that make us people that can have a richer world, either inside and outside. So I think the possibilities are endless, and hopefully this sense of human rights, of tolerance, of this curiosity for the other, to know the other, and to share what we are. I think that's a world of possibility for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Velez?
I think that it's important to develop structures that help society to create a horizontal dialogue and debate about who we are, our differences. This conversation, the dialogue, could be not only between individuals, but especially between different kinds of communities, is one of the main issues historically in our country. The differences and power of all communities. At the moment, there hasn't been that kind of dialogue. Maybe it got to be started by the government. Maybe it got to be started by the society itself. Maybe it could be helped by intellectuals and artists. But it's a necessary step for trying to understand and working together, especially after and through all these difficult moments that not only got to do with the pandemic, but especially with the crisis of the last crisis, and not because we have wonderful achievement of the last 20 years after we took control of our whole territory. Who we are, we need to accept it. We need to accept the multiculturality of the differences between us to move together. And I guess the arts, they have a very important role in this. So it would be great that the government give more grants and support, not only money, but as well develop projects for giving the chance to all these communities and people and artists to create, to build up their own voices. As more diverse we are, more rich we will be, and we will be able to work together.
Thank you so much. Professor Lo?
I think the key word here is getting our population to appreciate our diversity. You know, we talk about diversity in the natural world, in the animal world, and the plant world, and so forth. Well, I think in this Isthmus of Panama, the diversity of our people and our ability to come together to work as a nation should be our goal. And our goal should not be what it was maybe 200 years ago to create a society that is homogeneous, because we are not racially nor culturally homogeneous. We have a diversity, and we should not try to get others to eliminate what comes natural to them, or their natural appearance, or whatever, just to appear as others. We need to embrace the differences and to see how those differences can enrich our country. I think as a retired teacher, we have a lot of work to do in the Ministry of Education. If you go through our textbook in the Ministry of Education, you very rarely see a Black face, and you don't see anything about our African ancestry nor our Afro-Caribbean contributions. And I think the Ministry of Education has a lot of work to do to prepare the citizens of our country. When I was growing up, and I remember going to the conservatory and I spoke English to one of my friends, they frowned at me. They say, "This is Panama. You don't speak English in Panama." And so many of us felt inhibited to speak English. Of course, with the preponderance of English in the society and in the world of commerce, we now see the importance of speaking English. But for many Afro-Panamanians, Afro-Caribbean Panamanians, we went through different periods when we felt inhibited to speak the language of our parents and grandparents. So I think a lot of work has to be done by the Ministry of Education to change attitudes and to get us to appreciate our diversity and to see how we can use our talents to continue developing this Isthmus of Panama. Thank you.
Thank you so much again to to Rebecca, Humberto, Melba, for this opportunity today that we for this conversation about the Republic of Panama, how changed a lot, how the evolution of the opportunities in this small country. A small country, everybody is welcome, and that is part of our origin. That is part of our mission as a country. And well, again, thank you so much for your participation, for everybody that was here today. And just we have to see you next time in other opportunity. And obviously, everybody that don't know about Panama, you are welcome to come to visit our country. And thank you so much again for this occasion. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.